Okay. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm from Chicago, and I do research about history and the political economy. And my dissertation is about the great divergence between China and Europe. And I'm very happy to introduce this paper. This is actually the first chapter of my dissertation. So the name is The Curse of Mendeleev-Hafen, a model of power centralization. So it's basically a theoretical model. We have this quote from Barrington Moore, 1993, Social Origins of a Dictatorship and Democracy. Basically, he has the observation that in traditional societies, more centralized society were like China and Russia were more susceptible to pattern revolution, and more diffuse societies like India were least susceptible to pattern revolution, and the feudal societies like Europe were somewhere in between. So he basically raised a very interesting point, is that power centralization might be related to pattern revolution. And as we all know, what do I mean by power centralization? It means the power distribution between the ruler and the elite is more advantageous to the ruler. And as we all know, actually in 1000 BCE, China is very similar to medieval Europe at that time. It has a feudal state with hereditary elites who held fiefs. But over the next more than 2,000 years, China's power centralized step by step. It phased out the feudal legacy from Han Dynasty. It introduced imperialism in Sui Dynasty, and it consolidated imperialism in 1000 CE Song Dynasty. And until Ming Qing Dynasty, which is the last two dynasties, it became a centralized state with non-hereditary bureaucrats who was elected by exams and can be appointed or dismissed by the ruler. So what happened over these 2,000 years? So some past explanations for power centralization. Some research focus on random factors like geography, such as the hydraulic nepotism thesis, and more recently, fractal land hypothesis. But as a political economist, I'm more interested in the strategic interplay between different players. So some of the research, they focus on the strategic play between two players, which is the ruler and the elite. And I list one paper for in 2009 here, because actually his idea is that when there are two players who are striving for power, whether the power will centralize to the ruler depends on chance. Sometimes the ruler wins, sometimes the elite win. And but if we introduce a third player, which is the external threat, then we can get power centralization more determinately, such as Koyama and Sun's paper in 2018 basically says nomadic invasion led to a centralized state in China. And we also have another paper by Ronald Gianoli, both 2015, and they basically say that the interstate competition, interstate war in Europe actually led to state formation in Europe. And my paper will talk about also three players, but the threat is coming from inside, which is the endogenous threat from peasant rebellion, and that can also lead to power centralization. So why is well, Europe also has peasant revolution. Europe also has peasant rebellion, not revolution. Why is the peasant rebellion in China so special? I argue the difference lies in political legitimacy. Actually, in Europe, the peasant rebellions usually don't have the legitimacy to claim rulership. There are a lot of works talking about this, but I cite Rubin 2017 here. Basically, he says that the legitimacy in medieval Europe was given by religious church, and the church lent the legitimacy to hereditary rule of the kings and nobles. The peasant rebellion, they were not trying to change the social order, but they tried to demand better treatment, like tax cuts from their laws. But in Imperial China, the peasant rebellion actually has legitimacy to claim rulership, which means they kill the ruler by violence and become the ruler themselves. So how does that be legitimized. Actually, China is a very secular society. So in 1000 BCE, when Zhou Wu, a vassal of Shang, defeated Shang and established his own dynasty, without a religious institution to legitimize him, he invented the mandate of heaven to legitimize himself. And basically, it was a relatively meritocratic political philosophy. Basically, it says with good governance, ruler may retain his mandate. With bad governance, the ruler loses mandate, and his position will be vulnerable to rival claimants. And for better or for worse, that has a lasting impact in Chinese society. And the subsequent peasant rebellions always invoke mandate of heaven in order to justify their claim to the rulership. I have some evidence here. For example, this is a table listing the claims of peasant rebellions in Chinese history, the major peasant rebellions. And you can see that they are quite vocal about what they want. They are quite vocal about their political claims. They all often mention like heaven, sky, king, emperor in their slogans. And they even establish their little regimes, which can, some of them finally fully develop into a dynasty.
So can I ask just clarification about the measurement? So this is stories of actual peasants, so we working class people, taking the arms and taking over the king position.
Yeah, they basically killed the ruler, killed the elite, and then they become
of the rebellion becomes the
ruler, and then they introduce their like military commanders as the new elite. Yeah. So Chinese peasants are quite violent, and they have achieved a lot in history. They founded at least 2 dynasties and overthrew at least 4 dynasties, and actually contributed to almost the fall of all dynasties. For example, in this table, I won't have time to go into this in detail, but you can see that at least we have the second dynasty, which is Han Dynasty, which is a very long dynasty, and the second to the last dynasty, Ming Dynasty, which is also very long dynasty, were both founded maybe undoubtedly by peasant from peasantry class, and we have some other like dynasty quickly, yes. So that actually introduced to my model. And this is infinite horizon model with 3 players, ruler, elite, and peasant. So at each period, rents will be generated, and the ruler will choose to share ST rent to the elite, which means power in substantially in my model. And the elite may get the opportunity to challenge the ruler. And then if he gets the opportunity, he decides whether to challenge the ruler. Then if the elite decides to challenge the ruler, then peasant hero will get an opportunity also to arise. And the peasants, this means the peasant hero will only arise when the upper class is divided, which means the chance of the peasant hero taking over the regime is larger when the ruler and the elite they are divided. And if the peasant hero got the chance to arise, he will decide whether to really initiate a revolution and incur cost decay. So basically, you can say that the setup between the elite and the peasants, they are symmetric. They both have the chance to challenge or revolt with a probability, and they decide whether to challenge or revolt based on some trade-offs.
Just a clarifying question. So the rents appears from nowhere. So you don't need the non-elite to actually invest in this.
Yeah, basically this is a productive regime, and the rents will come from the land. Yeah.
And
we don't model the executive process of producing, but you can think they are produced by the peasants.
Yeah, okay, then you should incentivize them. I mean, if you expropriate them, they're not going to do it. Okay.
Yeah, we don't model because our focus is how peasants spread change the power distribution between them. And the payoff at the end of T is there are three kinds of chaos. First, when the elite decided not to challenge, then we have peace, and the ruler elite will get rents this period and keep their position next period. And if the elite decide to challenge, challenges and passing the revolt, we have internal conflict. And sometimes the elite defeats the ruler with private peace, and sometimes not defeated by the ruler. And the winner will get all the rents this period and become the ruler next period. And a new elite will be generated to play the game with the ruler next period. And finally, we have the peasant revolution, when the elite challenge and the peasant revolt. And both the ruler and the elite will be eliminated, and we get 0 for this and future period. And the peasant hero himself becomes the ruler next period, and get all the rents this period. And a new elite will be generated to play the game with the new ruler. And these are quantities like characterizing the equilibrium, but the most important one is the F star, which means equilibrium amount of the rents the ruler shares with the elite. And
Sorry, I think there's a bit of a mismatch with the examples you mentioned earlier, because in a lot of those, like the big ones, there was first the peasant revolution, right? So Chen Sheng Huang, the Huang Chao, and Li Zizheng, that was when the elites did not. There was no challenge. There was no elite challenge before that. The elite sort of jumped on the bandwagon.
But when the ruler and the elite, they are the peasant rebellions happen all the time, right? But when the ruler and elite, they are quite unified, they can easily more easily put down the peasant rebellion, right? But when they are divided, actually peasant hero has more chance, a larger probability to take over the regime, right?
Yeah.
So peasant rebellions happens maybe all the time, but sometimes they are easily put off because the ruler and the elite, they have all the resources to put down them, right? But when they are divided, the peasant hero have larger chance. And the model only needs this. Actually, the peasant hero, the peasant rebellion is more likely to succeed when the ruler and the elite are divided.
Yeah, just curiosity. So how many times in history do you see the rise of a peasant hero? Which means that peasant revolution actually topples the government. How many times in
I
history?
think introduced earlier, like among the basic dynasties, 2 are established by the peasants.
Okay, so
Yeah.
only 2. Oh,
Others, they contributed to the demise of all the dynasty, but they.
thanks.
So the solution concept is macro perfectly driven those strategies. So we solve first for the peasant's choice. Peasant here decide whether to revolt. And a crucial thing from this is that when the ruler has a better payout, and the peasant sees that if I become a ruler, I will have a better payout, then peasant is more likely to revolt. This means when power centralizes to the ruler will have a better payout, and the peasant is more likely to revolt. And we then, given the peasant's choice, we solve for the elite's choice. So elite will decide whether to challenge given peasant choice. And it's back with the induction, right? When the peasant has a larger probability to revolt, when the peasant has larger probability to revolt, elite will worry that if I challenge the ruler, that will create a larger chance for the peasant to kill us. So elite will be less likely to choose to challenge the ruler when there is a peasant threat. And finally, we solve for ruler's choice whether to share the rents with the elite. So basically, if we share the rents, and then this will be elite will accept. He will share just enough to keep the elite happy to not do challenge, or he just shares 0. And depending on whether the elite choose to challenge and whether the peasant decides to revolt, we have 4 kinds of equipments. These are separated into peaceful and military equipment, and the equipment with threat or without threat of peasant revolution. And we will focus on the 2 peaceful equipment because we care about the power centralization across these stable unified dynasties. So for the peaceful equipment without the threat of peasant revolution, we can say that the ruler, because it's a peaceful equipment, the ruler will share just enough to keep the elite happy. But because there is no threat of pattern revolution, the ruler needs to share a larger share of his rents to the elite. Of the elite will choose to challenge him. And in the peaceful equipment, so we denote that rent shared in the first case as alpha bar, which is a larger number. And in the peaceful agreement with threat of pattern revolution, because now there is threat of pattern revolution, the ruler needs to share a smaller amount of revenue to the elite. So after doing some math, we can know that actually these two equations can coexist in some parametric space. So this gives us this graph. So on the horizontal axis, this is the probability of a list opportunity to challenge, and on the y-axis is the peasant hero's cost of revolting. And we can see that the blue dashed line circle out the peaceful equipment without threat of pattern revolution, and the yellow to the lower corner circles out peaceful equipment with threat of pattern revolution. We can see they sometimes they overlap. And there is this coexistence of the two equipments. By the coexistence of the two equipments, we know that represents a self-enforcing multi-equilibrium. And I understand this as culture. These two equipments are self-fulfilling processes in this region. Why? Because which equipment is realized depends on the cultural norms. This basically means the pattern revolution and the power centralization, the idea of pattern revolution and the power centralization, they reinforce each other. If the upper class, they believe that there is pattern revolution, then elite will demand that, and the ruler will concentrate more power and have better payout, and the peasant seeing that will be more likely to revolt, that confirming the threat of pattern revolution.
Yeah, sorry, just on this point, is it plausible historically that peasants revolt really because they see that the ruler has a lot of amazing power, or alternatively, because I think you can have the same mechanism in your model with a small change, where ruler concentration means that peasants are worse off. This would lead, I think, to the same mechanisms, but I think maybe seems a little more intuitive to me that rather than revolting because now it's amazing to be king, they revolt because if the king has or the emperor has a lot of power, then the peasants are even worse off. I think you could also formulate it this way and get the same results,
that's
right?
a good point. But as I introduced the barrier to most literature at the beginning, and it says when a society is more centralized, that's more susceptible to pattern revolution, because peasants, when they just kill the ruler, they can become the ruler. But if the society is more diffused, right, so they can only kill someone like individual laws. They cannot take over the full regime and become the ruler themselves. So the chaos of the game is lower. So it will be less likely to. But if the upper class believe there is no pattern revolution, then vice versa. So basically, there are two equipments, and sometimes the actors will coordinate to the first equipment, and sometimes they will coordinate to the second equipment. That might depend on cultural norms. So I argue that the centralization in early imperial China basically is equipment transition within the coexistent region. And some accidental pattern revolution may happen and shift the equipment from one to the other. And if but we can also imagine another case is that the equipment shifts across the parametric space. I argue that it represents centralization in late imperial China, because the parametric space would form a feedback loop between the parameter tree and the results tree. So basically, in order to achieve that, we need to make some changes to the model. Because pattern hero will arise with some if similar probability, even if the upper class is not divided, and he is more likely to arise when upper class is divided. That's more realistic. And if we have peasant revolution, a successive peasant revolution before, and then later the peasant sees this good example, he will more likely to arise. This is the probability of him arise. That may reduce his organization cost, and that will feed back to the result and create a free feedback loop in history. Yes.
Let's conclude.
Oh, closing. So finally, the welfare is the ruler's welfare will be better, peasant's welfare will be better, but elite welfare will be worse. And maybe we can also find some European case of this mechanism. For example, in pre-modern era, the common revolts finally get some political legitimacy. Then French aristocracy then access to Napoleon centralization, feeling that a popular uprising might take them out. So the Napoleonic state building being both elite-driven and effective, arguably preempted a more radical revolution from the common class. So thank you.